Let's hunt some kimono. What's that? Next hunt's in the first map? No problem. This is stupid. Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about Wild Hearts. This video is going to be a follow-up to my review in progress that I posted on the channel at this point a couple of weeks ago, I believe. You might have seen that video. At that point in time, I still hadn't finished the game, but I still wanted to give you guys my initial impressions of the game from a technical standpoint, from a gameplay standpoint, from a performance standpoint, all of that stuff. However, right now, I have finished the game, and I've put over 110 hours into it. There's still plenty of more for me to do in the game that I want to do on the game, and today's video is going to be discussing where I'm at with Wild Hearts. Before we begin, it's important to remind you, this game was provided to me by EA so that I could give it a look, tell you guys my opinions on it, and also produce all of this content that I've been producing up until this point. So what are my thoughts now that I have finished Wild Hearts, beat the final boss, saw credits, and engaged with the end game a little bit? I like it. I like Wild Hearts a lot. I think it is a fantastic entry into the monster hunting genre. I am happy that they've put this game out. I really like the concept. I love the gameplay loop. I think the Karakuri construction stuff is actually really great, despite the fact that, you know, initially a lot of us, I feel, were apprehensive about, we're going to be Fortniting things and, you know, hunting monsters with Fortnite. It actually works really well. Again, in my opinion, I'm sure that there are people out there that are not going to appreciate the building elements of it. Even more importantly than building the Karakuri in combat, I really appreciated the ability to be able to, you know, set up my own camps and decide, no, I want a camp here, because this is a location that I go to when I want to do things, and then from here gives me access to this zone. I'll build a zip line over here, do all of these things. I really appreciated the opportunity to be able to customize the maps and make my own hunting arenas, because it just kind of makes sense, you know? I thought that was a really innovative thing that they did with that. I also greatly enjoyed the weaponry, and I'm going to be talking more about that a little bit further ahead in the video. So overall, you'll hear me say all these things and you're going to like, wow, sounds like you really love it. Looks like the game's perfect. You would definitely recommend it, right? And at this point in time, I would have to say no. I would have to say you need to at the very least wait until a performance patch is addressed. Because whilst I loved all of these aspects of the game, there is one big, ugly, nasty, stinking but in the middle of this, which is, I love Wild Hearts, but the performance issues are completely unacceptable. And what's even more unacceptable is that these performance issues were identified very early on, which means that, you know, a QA team should have been able to detect these if they were properly testing the game on different platforms. Because here's the thing. I can understand when there are problems on the PC side of things, because it's very hard to, you know, analyze the whole gamut of hardware that is available on the PC side of things. And if you say otherwise, you know, that's whatever. I know that some games come out and they're perfect. That just means that probably the people that worked on those games had a much better QA team. But whenever you have these type of performance inconsistencies on PC, it is something that, you know, I kind of expect. I shouldn't have to. Nobody should have to. I want to make that perfectly clear. Nobody should have to expect to have performance issues on PC, but it is something that I'm like, I can understand because there's big hardware variance, right? However, when you have those same performance issues on consoles, then it's like, wow, you guys definitely messed up. Now, you guys might be like, oh, you're just a console fanboy, blah, blah, blah. No, listen. I play on consoles because it's a convenience thing, because it is easier for me to pick up a console, take it to my house, and then bring it back to the studio here. than to pick up my big, beefy gaming rig and take that to my house and bring it back here, because that is way heavier, requires way more equipment. It's just a pain in the ass, okay? So I play on consoles as a convenience thing. As someone who has a family, father, 2 children, it's just more convenient, because I don't record in my house because there's not enough room. But anyway, now that I've explained that, when you have these performance problems in consoles, these are things that should be very easily identifiable. Like what I experienced, the slow-mo thing that we're going to get into in great detail in just a couple of minutes, that is something that any QA team playing through the game once should have been able to detect. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Unless you're playing through the game, in chopped up segments, which shouldn't be the way that you do the final QA tests on a game. Personal opinion, my opinion is hey, game goes gold, put it on a QA team, make them play it, figure it out. That's the way that I would imagine stuff works at QA. Probably not the way that it works, as clearly seen by this example. But the performance issue is incredibly disappointing because of the potential that this game has. Because a lot of times you'll see a game comes out and you look at some of the concepts of the game and you're like, well, I don't like this aspect of the gameplay, or I don't like that aspect of this weird thing that this game is doing. Or maybe it has a really bad business model. Like, oh my God, this thing is riddled with microtransactions. It's got season passes. It's got, all of the crazy things that so many games have, right? So many games that come out nowadays have a million different things. Super mega hyper live service enabled, bada bada ba, bada bing bada boom. Terrible, right? We have all of these terrible business models that have kind of been imported from mobile gaming into games that now show up on PC and consoles. And this is one of the things that is so incredibly frustrating about Wild Hearts, and that is that I love the gameplay loop. I love it. The game is fine the way that it is. Some people might want to change a couple of things here or there. Maybe they don't like the karakuri system, whatever. I love it. I think it's great. Okay? I have nothing to point to the experience that I've had from the beginning until the end of the game. I have nothing really to point in terms of a gameplay standpoint that I'd be like, I mean, there's a couple of nitpicky things and we'll get to those. But from a broad perspective, I just loved it. I thought it was amazing. I greatly enjoyed the game. And then you have a business model that is exactly what I would want for pretty much any game that comes out, which is no microtransactions currently. And they say no plans for microtransactions in the game, although I kind of feel that might change because unfortunately the performance hindrance is the performance issues that the game has is most likely going to lead to a lot of refunds. I would imagine that a lot of people refunded the game, and I think that is perfectly reasonable, but I imagine that those refunds are going to mean, less profits for the game. They're going to mean less sales because word gets around. The game was viewed as mostly negative, I think, on Steam for a good long while, and it deserves it. And, that is going to really hurt it in the long run. And they might end up changing their business model, which sucks because the business model, this is exactly what I want from a game. It comes out, you get to play it, that's it. That's it. There's no nickel and diming. There's no dicking you around. There's no nonsense. And this is what I would want. So, again, it's like you got really good gameplay. Really good business model. Some really innovative stuff when it comes to the karakuri constructions. Some really interesting concepts when it comes to the weaponry. And then you just have performance coming in and just smashing all of that. Just taking a massive, big, steamy dump on all of the effort that a lot of these developers put in. And it sucks. They should have delayed this. They should have figured out a way to release the game with proper performance. And the other issue with performance, because again, we're gonna get into a little bit more detail here. The other issue with performance is that they said, we're working on a performance patch. It's going to be out next week. Next week was the week that has already passed. And there was a patch that came out on consoles. And it did absolutely nothing. So now some of you guys are going to be like, well, Rurikhan, why didn't you just, greatly detail this performance problem, on your review in progress? Usually performance problems, you can figure those out fairly early into the game, no? And yes, I did a big portion of my review in progress was about the way that performance worked. And at the time, the biggest issue was if you were playing on consoles, you can play either some really weird, funky, checkerboarded 4K that I did not like at 30 FPS, or you can play at 1080p 60. Now, 1080p 60 doesn't bother me. I specifically mentioned in my review that it didn't seem like the visuals on display, the visual fidelity on display, warranted it to only be 1080 60 FPS. You know, I felt like the game should be able to run 1440p on a PS5 with the hardware that's available to it. That shouldn't be too problematic. Which, to be honest, if you take into consideration that I believe that it's the same engine across both Wild Hearts and Wo Long, and if you play the Wo Long demo, you'll see that in that game runs fine, 60 FPS, and it's definitely not 1080p. It's either 1440 or full-on 4K. I can't tell exactly because, you know, they don't really detail that. So there might be the information on some Twitter post or whatever, but like in the game, I personally can't tell too much difference in 1440p, 4K. Like if I see them side to side, I'll be able to say, okay, that has more resolution, but just looking at one image, whatever. But the game running in performance mode on console, Wo Long that is fine. It's perfect. No problems, no issues. But anyway, Wild Hearts running 1080p 60 is not a big problem for me. So I was like, you know, here's how the game runs, is whatever. I don't mind that much at 1080p 60. Now, the big issue is that the really nasty big performance issue for me only revealed itself 60 hours into the game. Now, there's no way that I can predict that something, you know, I played the game before I did my review. It was like, what was it 30 hours? No. Probably less. Was it 10 hours? I don't know. I don't know how many hours I had played of the game when I did my review in progress. But, you know, how am I going to predict that 60 hours into the game, another performance issue is going to reveal itself? And interestingly enough, in one of the maps that I had already been playing the game on. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And I don't think it makes any sense to anybody. Especially when that particular performance issue that arises itself isn't even like, oh, so you're dropping frames. No, the game just starts running in slow motion. I don't think I've seen that before in a video game. Like, I've seen performance hits where it's like, oh my god, it gets so framey that it's damn near unplayable. But a performance issue that makes the game run in slow motion, if I have seen it before, I don't remember it. Now, I do have a terrible memory, but, you know. And this was weird because it only showed up kind of like when you kind of get to the high rank equivalent, which is when you start hunting Mighty Komodo. Now, like I said, I like to take my time with games, which is why this revealed itself to me at 60 hours. For other players, it might have revealed itself to them significantly earlier. And an interesting thing about this particular performance issue is that the moment that I experienced it, I instantly made a video on it, right? Because, you know, I experienced it once on a stream, and I was like, oh, this might have been like some memory leak thing, whatever. Restarted the console, the game started running fine. But once I was able to experience it consistently, by the way, you might be listening to a little bit of background noise. There's people working in the warehouse today. I'm sorry for that. But once I experienced the issue consistently, I was like, okay, here's the problem. Let's explain this in, you know, but basically, in my situation, what happened is the very first map that you play on, once you get to high rank, there are certain areas of that map that whenever you're fighting Komodo there, you're literally playing the game in slow motion. That video is available on the channel. You can check it out. I'm not going to be putting slow motion footage in this video because it's bad enough I had to do it for the other video. So, whatever. And basically my solution to that at this point is I just stopped hunting in that map. I avoid hunting in that map. So whenever there are Komodo available that I need to hunt in any other map, I'll go to the other map. As a matter of fact, you might remember there was a recent live stream here on the channel where I wanted to get started on Volatile Komodo, and I went to that first map, and I was fighting him in slow motion. It's like I just couldn't deal with it anymore. It's too frustrating. Because, like, I don't want to be playing the game in slow motion. What the hell are we doing? What are we doing? And this is just, like, such a stupid thing. Because, again, this game has so much potential, and now it's just going to be ridiculed until the end of time because of these performance issues. I mean, the developers deserved better. The IP deserved better. And the players deserve better. It's just incredibly frustrating that this continues to be the case where we release video games that aren't ready to be released. I understand that maybe they wanted to release it before Capcom revealed Monster Hunter 6. Or maybe they wanted to release it because of some quarterly earnings bullshit. I don't care. I would have just appreciated for you to release a finished game. Now, I will make an update video when and if they do a patch that fixes this. Every patch that comes out, I'll go back into the game and I will test the first map to see if the problem is solved. But until this problem is solved, I cannot recommend this game. And here's another interesting thing about this performance issue, is that not only it happens on consoles and on PCs. On PCs, I would expect to see some variance there depending on the hardware that somebody has. Somebody might be running on a 3090 Ti, somebody might be running it on a 4080, somebody might be running it on an, a 79, whatever it is it 7950 AMD? I don't know what AMD is at. Or you could be running it on my hardware, which is the 6900 XT, right? Have a wide variety of wide diversity of hardware, so I would expect, a lot of variance there. On consoles, I wouldn't expect the same thing because the hardware is the hardware is the hardware. The console is the console. It is what it is. But even in consoles, this issue is happening at different times to different people. Like, I had people tell me, oh yeah, I experienced the slow-mo problem in my first 2 hours of gameplay. And I was like, it took me 60 hours to get to the slow motion problem. What? That is wild. And I realize that I've been using the phrase "that is wild" quite often recently, and the name of the game is Wild Hearts, but whatever. It's like, it's wild in a terrible way. Like, how can there be so much variance with this problem and the game was still allowed to be released? You understand the problem that we are facing here? Like, people, they really need to test this stuff out. These games need to, Again, I wouldn't even mind if your problem is like, hey, look, we can't do 1440p, but here's some really good 1080p 60. And I'm like, that's fine. It's not a problem. I don't care. That's cool. The problem is when you have that and then 60 hours in, hey, now it's 1080p 60, but in slow motion. Especially when I was playing the Bladed Wagasa, which is a parry-reliant weapon, in which I would, my brain would kind of format to, oh, on this frame, I parry, and the game slows down. And sometimes it'd even be inconsistent because it wouldn't slow down by like, oh, it slows down by 20%. No, sometimes within the same area, the game would be 20% slower, then 80% slower, then 30% slower, then 50% slower. And it's like, it's not even consistent. I can't even adapt my parries to that. It's like, oh, God. But anyway, I ended up swapping to Maul just because, A, it's simpler, don't have to parry, timing windows are different, whatever. Don't have to build up a gauge. So right now, I'm playing Maul. But still, I still don't want to be hunting monsters in slow motion. I just don't want to do it. So now, let's talk about other aspects of Wild Hearts. The story. Now that I finished the game, I can tell you about the story. I thought the story was good. It was not mind-blowingly fantastic, but I thought the story was pretty good. I appreciated the effort that the developers put in. Another thing is the weapon tree. I've been talking about the weapon tree throughout this video. I'm saying that I really appreciate what they did with the weapon tree. And the thing about the weapon tree is that every weapon in the tree, and you can get, the tree is like fully connected. All of the weapons are connected in the same tree, as opposed to having like Rathalos tree, the Rathian tree. No, it's like everything is connected in the same tree. And the way that it works is you can go backwards and forwards into the tree to pick up all of the skills that you want. And I thought that was really cool. You can have up to like, by the time you reach the end of the game, you can usually pick up 4 inherited skills from any weapon that you want in the game, which is really cool because it allows you to do builds for your weapon. And then you can also complement that build with a mixed armor set. And that was a very interesting thing because I started experimenting with it. And, the problem is it's also very grindy. But in a way, I question if this is a problem or if this is something that my brain has now been formatted to be like, oh, this is problematic because it's easier in other games. Because like recent monster hunting games have become a little bit easier when it comes to the grinding aspect of it. Whereas older monster hunter games, in order for you to do a full set, like it would actually take you a lot of hunts to collect all of the materials. And Wild Hearts goes more towards the older Monster Hunter style, where you're gonna be required to kill a monster a lot of times in order to really get the materials that you need, whether that is to create its weapon, whether that is to create its armor, whatever. Like, to give you an idea, I'm trying to create the chest piece from the final boss. At this point, I've killed that boss 5 times, haven't used any of its materials, and I still can't craft one piece of armor from that boss. Now, you could also say, hey, maybe you're just, like, incredibly unlucky. And yeah, sure, I am. I know that I'm unlucky when it comes to RNG, but this is just to give you an idea of how that works. But anyways, the thing about the weapon tree and why it's interesting is because you're able to collect all of these different skills. Like, for instance, there's a skill for hammer, which is called Shockwave. There's, like, 2 weapons in the tree that have Shockwave. So if you want to max out Shockwave, you'll be expected to go down the tree and craft a bunch of weapons like, okay, I'll get Shockwave here, then I'm going to go to the left, then I'm going to go up, then I'm going to go down, then I'm going to go... And you're basically making a crazy drawing in the tree in order to get all the skills that you want. And, you know, that allows you for a very interesting level of min-maxing, but it also makes it incredibly grindy. Another criticism that I have on that, though, because I like what they're doing with the weapon tree. It does make it grindier, but that's like a double-edged sword. Some people are like, well, that's fine. I get more... It gives me more reason to go hunt things, which is fine. Other people are like, oh, but I want to play another game, which is one of the problems that I had with Wild Hearts. You guys remember when they announced the release that I was like, bro, that's like 2 weeks away from Wolong. You understand that most of the people that play Wild Hearts will also want to play Wolong. You're even the same developer. I mean, it's a different publisher, but it's even the same developer. You should be aware of this. You're going to have your 2 games cannibalizing each other. Why? Right? Because there are some people that are going to like want to, okay, I want to take a break from this now and play Wolong. Whereas if you had given it a wider gap, people would be like, oh, this is great. I have tons of stuff to do in Wild Hearts. And eventually when the other one come out. Or maybe release Wolong before and Wild Hearts later. And that would allow you to fix your performance issues. But anyway, you know, how grindy the tree is going to be a positive for some people and a negative for other people. It's whatever. But one of the things that I would criticize about the weapon tree is the fact that there's too many small monster materials required throughout that tree. And I don't like that. I don't like that at all. Because, like, look, it's not interesting to me to go into a map looking for small monsters. To give you an idea, the perfect example for this is a material called the large scale, which requires you to kill a very specific lizard in high rank maps. Now, I don't know exactly where these lizards hang out because these maps are huge. They're vast. And, you know, I remember 1 or 2 locations where I've seen these lizards before. They might be in many more locations across the map. I've seen them in 2 spots. In one map and, you know, in 2 spots across 2 different maps. And I think together there's 4 spawns of these creatures. And then you have to wait until they respawn. Of the ones that I've seen, there's probably more. But the ones that I've seen over 110 hours of gameplay, I've seen these lizards in 2 places. And I would go to those 2 places, kill the 4 lizards, and then I'd have to wait. There should never be a time in a game where like, well, now I have to, in a hunting game in particular, well, now I just have to wait until they respawn. There's no quests to kill small monsters. There's like, you know, optional side quests, kind of like the optional side quests in Monster Hunter Rise, where it's like, oh, kill 10 small monsters, whatever. But there's no specific quest where it's like, oh, go kill this thing, and then you get like bonus rewards for completing the quest. And it was very frustrating to me whenever I would get to the point of the tree, when I'm experimenting with all these different weapons, I get to the point of the tree, boom, 5 large scales, and I would be like, no, I don't want to do that. That sucks. Like, I will kill a giant kimono 20 times. No problem. I'll kill that sucker 20 times. No problem. I know where he is. I go and I kill him. It's whatever. Like, hunting these tiny-ass kimono to complete my... Like, that was a problem to me. I did not like that at all. But yeah, apart from that, there's not really much else to say. I guess that initially I didn't really like the last boss very much because I was fighting it with the Blade of Wagasa, but I've been fighting that boss with the maul. It's not a problem, so it's a very weapon-specific boss, which unfortunately is also something that happened to me in Monster Hunter World. You guys remember when I first got to Xeno'jiva, I had Sword and Shield, I was like, ugh. That fight was not fun with Sword and Shield. That was like an Insect Glaive fight, dude. Insect Glaive all the way. Dude, a typewriter on top of it. Drrr, drrr. But yeah, overall, it's like, I think this is a fantastic game. I think it is riddled with performance issues that really put a hamper on the experience. And that's why I'm personally probably going to be putting it down until they fix the performance issues. Because, like, look, I don't want to be worried if I'm having problems with slowdowns or not. Because slowdowns can happen in any map. Most of the time, they happen in the first map. Sometimes they can happen in other maps. Like a while back, I tweeted about how I hated the Amaterasu fight with a burning passion. And then I realized the reason why I didn't like that fight is because it had inconsistent slow-ups at inconsistent moments during the fight itself. And that is what was causing me to not be able to parry the monster. Especially because you're talking about a monster that literally exits the camera, like you stop being able to see it. I mean, you can try facing the camera full up, but by the time you're done facing the camera full up, he's dropping on you and murdering you. And so it is very frustrating when, like, he jumps up and you have to kind of, like, time it in your head when he's going to come back down in order to then land a parry, and then the game arbitrarily slows down while he's off screen, and I shoot the parry and it's like, crap, boom, and then he slams you. And that was so incredibly frustrating. And the thing is, because these slowdowns were inconsistent, I wasn't even realizing it. And then I swapped the game to like 4K, which is 30 FPS, but it had less slowdowns. And I was like, this fight is actually giga easy. I don't have a problem with this fight at all. It's just because of these random slowdowns that are happening makes the whole experience miserable. And so that ends up being the point that I'm at right now. I'm going to be taking a break because I don't want to be fighting a monster and suddenly having this weird slow-mo thing happen, whether I'm playing in multiplayer or solo or whatever. It just puts a hamper on the whole experience, and it makes me resentful of the game. And I don't want to be resentful of the game because I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the time that I've played it. I was frustrated whenever it was in slow motion, but if I keep putting myself through it and having to experience the slow motion, I'm just going to be upset. I might do a couple of streams here and there, but, until they fix the problem, I think I'm kind of done with it for now, at least. And pretty soon we're going to be having Wolong show up anyway, so it is what it is. I'm going to be playing that. But, yeah, that's going to be it for now. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit it up with a like. If you did not enjoy this video, hit it up with a dislike. Feedback is important. If you usually enjoy my content, subscribe, bell notification icon, all of that stuff. And I'll see you in the next one. Stay strong, stay safe, peace out.